Alabama men's basketball got a big commitment, and you can see what I'm talking about. 7 feet, 280-pound Moussa Gaye, originally from Senegal, but playing right now at Lakeland Community College in Illinois. This is a young man that had all the major schools swooping in on him. He originally committed to Valparaiso, but schools like Alabama, Texas, Indiana, Southern Cal, Tennessee, and more began recruiting him, but Anthony Grant gets him. He'll come in next year. That means the Tide will have 2 7-footers as he'll join Carl Engstrom from Sweden, who is already on campus. Big hit for Anthony Grant, the 3rd commitment for the upcoming signing class. Well, the agent issue in college football has reemerged, and Nick Saban doesn't want to talk about it this time. Monday, Coach had very little to say about a report that former North Carolina assistant John Blake, who was basically fired because of all his activity, disgraced to some degree, contacted Marcel Darius and encouraged the star defensive lineman at Alabama to at some point consider signing with agent Gary Richard. Here's Saban.
Well, you know, first of all, I don't know anything about this. Secondly, it's, to me, water that's been under the bridge for several months now and is somewhere down in the Gulf of Mexico now. So I really don't have much care about talking about that.
You say the Darius bit is water under the bridge, but still you've made a big issue out of the agent story. That it's,
yeah, the agents.
But it's
right. I'm not going to comment on coaches that do things that they have been accused of doing. I don't really know anything about this. I haven't thought about it. It's not important to me. I'm worried about South Carolina. So if you want to talk about that, we'll talk about that. But I'm not really going to talk about this anymore.
But John Blake is not a pimp, then.
Is that South Carolina?
No.
I guess I must stutter. Do I stutter? I'm not very clear on how I articulate. Maybe I need to go back to West Virginia and get some more hillbilly slang, and maybe everybody can understand a little better.
I don't really know what to add to that, Rodney. I guess the bottom line is this, and I kind of think this is where Coach was coming from. Darius got suspended for 2 games. He served that suspension. They're moving on. You know, John Blake is no longer at North Carolina, probably not going to be hired anytime soon at another college or university. So they're going forward, and you know, I think as far as Coach Saban's concerned, that's the end of it.
It was a distraction. He's done with it and wants to move forward.
All right, good stuff so far on the program. More good stuff coming up because we got folks hanging on the phone lines waiting to talk with us. First up tonight, Trey in West Block. And Trey, welcome in. How are you?
Good. How are y'all doing?
Doing well, Trey. Go ahead.
Yeah, we know it was a big weekend for Tide recruiting, you know, with all the elite guys from 2011 and 2012, you know, representing their respective classes at the game. Regardless of classification or, you know, in what capacity they were there, whether officially or unofficially, and considering both uncommitted prospects and those, you know, currently committed elsewhere, who would you say left with their interest in Alabama most significantly changed for the better? And
all right, Trey, good stuff. Yeah, good question. And Rodney, I think we'll probably start with Tony Stewart, outstanding linebacker out of Florida, was considering Alabama, but after the visit, you got a story up right now on TiderInsider.com, and he's high now on the Tide.
Yeah, Tony had been leaning to Clemson early on and then Florida State, so those had been his top 2. He'd never been to Tuscaloosa. He came up with his head coach, Keith Cromwell, on Saturday for the game. They stayed until Monday morning, and you know, they were both blown away. If you remember back, we did a story on TiderInsider.com with Jadavion Clowney and his high school coach and how they were blown away on their visit. It was very similar to that. Alabama made an extremely strong impression. Coach Cromwell told us that Tony may be leaning to Alabama as of now, so we'll see.
Running another Floridian that was positively impacted by his visit, D. Hart, running back, his teammate at Dr. Phillips, Haseen Clinton-Dix, already committed to the Tide.
Yeah, D. Hart is a tremendous little running back. Gary's a special teams guy as well, and you know, he's maybe not the Mark Ingram type back, but he is certainly a tremendous player, kind of a Javier Arenas type with the ball in his hands. And I think that he announces at 11 o'clock on Friday. We'll see what he's going to do. It's going to be Alabama or Michigan. And you know, talking to some people, they think that D. Hart favors Alabama, wants to come to Alabama, so we'll see.
All right, thank you, Trey. Let's move on and talk with BT in Tuscaloosa. BT, what's going on?
Hey, Gary and Rodney, what we need to do right now, and more than anything, worry about our opponents who we play in the rest of the year, and then the thing take care of itself.
You're right, BT, and I think Alabama's got the best coach in the country at doing that. I think that in the one thing about Nick Saban is, you know, people think of him as regimented, and he is, and stuck on what he does, but he'll change things. You know, he admitted after the first national championship at LSU that maybe he didn't stay on him the way that he had done in the past, and the next season they lost a few games. I think he's strictly looking at this as a one-game season, and that's the next game that you play.
And you mentioned that, and they do stay focused. And one of the reasons is, Gary, I think, is the way he handles his personnel. I mean, if you're not getting the job done, he'll quickly make a change. It's all about production, and so that means the guy who has a job has to continue to work hard, and those guys who are fighting for the position, they know they're going to have an opportunity to play no matter what point of the season it is.
All right, thank you, BT. Stick around. We got more phone calls and emails when we come back to Tiger Insider Television. Welcome back, everybody. I'm sporting the famous elephant wear from the locker room located on the University Strip in Tuscaloosa. Thank them, as I always do, for providing us with original elephant wear. The locker room has been a Tuscaloosa tradition for 46 years, and I can tell you that when I'm out and about wearing this shirt or any of the elephant wear shirts that I wear, people come up to me and ask, where did you get that? I tell them the locker room. You can visit right there on the University Strip, or you can look them up on the web at www.locker-room.biz. Tell them Gary Harris from Tiger Insider TV told you to check out original elephant wear. Well, the coach of the 1992 National Championship team was honored at halftime of Saturday night's game against Florida. Gene Stallings was recognized and applauded by the 100,000 plus fans on hand. He'll be inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in December. Saturday morning, the coach was our featured guest on Crimson Tide Kickoff, and he told myself and John Huddleston that he only gets, or should only get, just a small portion of the credit for his success.
You can be a good football player on a bad team and still go into the Hall of Fame. If you are coaching going into the Hall of Fame, it's because you've had good teams.
That's
that
right.
means you've had good players. And I understand why I'm going in, because we had good football players.
And this Saturday morning on Crimson Tide Kickoff, presented by AT&T and Alpha Insurance at 8 a.m., one of his former assistants, Brother Bill Oliver, will join us to talk Bama and South Carolina. Of course, he played and coached at Bama, and he's good friends with Steve Spurrier, so he should have some interesting analysis. That's Saturday morning on Crimson Tide Kickoff at 8 a.m. only on WVUA TV. All right, let's go back to our phones. I believe CB in Tuscaloosa is next up. CB, how are you doing, my friend?
Gentlemen, how y'all look? Everybody's already got us in the national championship game, and the Lord, I'm Bama through and through, and I hope they're right. We got the best talent Saturday, but we're playing a Spurrier coach team with a bye week. They'll let it all hang out. What y'all think about it?
No doubt about it. I mean, they're going to be bringing it. And the good news is that Alabama, under Nick Saban the last few years, have been in a lot of these type of games. I mean, I look back at last year at Ole Miss and Mississippi State, where teams were laying in wait. A couple years ago at Georgia. So Alabama's got experience going into hostile environments on the road and getting victories. Although I agree, when you're talking about Steve Spurrier, you're still talking about one of the premier coaches in college football. In fact, Rodney, a Nick Saban coach team has never been lit up the way they were lit up by Florida in 2001. It's the most yards they've ever given up under Nick Saban. I think it was like 660 yards in that game. Rex Grossman threw 5 touchdown passes. So Spurrier has had success against Saban in the past.
And I know you know this, but South Carolina doesn't have what Florida had in
I understand
2001.
that, absolutely.
Let's be honest about that. But no, nobody is better, CB, than focusing his team than Nick Saban and keeping them on the task at hand. So, again, I understand your concern. Certainly South Carolina is an outstanding team, but with Nick Saban on the sideline, you can bet Alabama will be prepared and focused and ready.
All right, let's go to Fayette and talk with Gary. Gary, welcome into TITV.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
What about Tim Jernigan of Florida, that recruit?
Yeah, Tim Jernigan is one of the outstanding defensive linemen, not only in the Southeast, but in the country, from Lake City, Florida, at Columbia High School. And, you know, a lot of people thought he was a lock for Florida for so long, and certainly the Gators are really strong on his list, but so is Alabama and LSU. And, in fact, Tim Jernigan was at Alabama this past weekend for an unofficial visit. He's been here before, back in the spring, for a junior day, and I know that he really likes Alabama, and Alabama is a player with Tim Jernigan. But right now, you know, it's really kind of hard for me to say. I would have to give an edge to Florida, but now I'm telling you, the LSU people think that they have the inside track. We'll see what happens, though. You never can tell. You know, we've got a long way to go.
All right, thanks for that phone call there, Gary. We've got to take the time out. Coming up, the Tide is back on the road this weekend for another top 25 showdown. Will they return to Tuscaloosa at 6-0, or will the Gamecocks end Alabama's long winning streak? We'll make our predictions next. Prediction time. First of all, to recap, just like the Tide, Rodney and I have both gone 5-0 so far, but another tough one to call this coming Saturday. Alabama's at South Carolina. Clearly the Tide's the favorite, but again, when you go on the road into a big stadium like Carolina has, hostile environment, you got to be at your best.
Yeah, you know the best way to slow down or stop some of that noise, Gary, play defense, run the football, control the clock, and things like that. And I think when you look at Alabama's defense, the way they seem to be progressing and developing, they've really made huge strides since the second half of the Arkansas game. I mean, we watched them against Florida, the pressure they got on Brantley. When you look at this game, I think if they take Marcus Lattimore out of the game and they continue to put pressure on the quarterback, South Carolina is going to have a really hard time. I think Alabama can run the football. South Carolina gave up 334 yards rushing to Auburn. I think South Carolina can be thrown on. They're giving up 220 yards a game through the air. So, you know, I think Alabama's too strong for South Carolina, 28-17.
You know, I promise, folks, we don't discuss these picks before we pick them on the air. I mean, I'm right there with you, Rodney. Again, just like at Arkansas, and Alabama, you know, was nervous. And the Hogs gave them a game, but Alabama was the better team, and the better team found a way to win. I think they do it again. I'm right there, 27-17. I like to tie it over the Gamecocks. Should be an entertaining football game on Saturday afternoon. Well, that's what we think. And join us next week when we make a prediction for Alabama's next game. Until then, we hope you have a good evening. I'd like to thank the Pottery Grill. That's where we're going for dinner tonight over at Northport. And don't forget, if you missed any of tonight's show, you can find it on our website, WVUATV.com. We'll also have a replay of it tonight here on WVUA at 10:35. So for Rodney Orr and Jen Hamner, our director, John Huddleston, our producer, and our entire TITV staff, I'm Gary Harris. We'll see you next week. Have a good night.